The boarding announcement for Flight 847 to New York echoed through Miami International Airport's Gate C-14, and Elena Morrison felt her stomach tighten with familiar anxiety. She gripped her worn leather bag closer, watching passengers form a chaotic line near the jetway. The late afternoon sun blazed through the terminal windows, casting long shadows across the polished floor. "Boarding Group C," the gate agent called, and Elena joined the shuffle forward, her mind still replaying the difficult conversation she'd had with her mother just hours before. The hospital room, the monitors beeping, her mother's frail hand squeezing hers. "Go home, mija. Your students need you. I'll be fine." But would she? The question haunted Elena as she found her seat, 24B, middle row, economy class. She settled in, pulling out the stack of ungraded essays she'd brought, hoping work would distract her from both her mother's illness and her fear of flying. The plane filled quickly around her. A businessman took the window seat without making eye contact, immediately opening his laptop. The aisle seat remained empty as departure time approached. Elena allowed herself a small hope for extra space, but at the last moment a frazzled-looking teenager dropped into it, earbuds already in, music loud enough that Elena could hear the bass line. She sighed and turned her attention to the essays. Her fifth graders had written about their heroes. She smiled despite her exhaustion as she read about firefighters, grandmothers, and in one case a pet hamster named Mr. Whiskers, who had saved his owner by waking her up for school. The plane pushed back from the gate. Elena's hands tensed on the armrest during takeoff, her breathing deliberate and controlled. She'd flown dozens of times, but it never got easier. The moment the wheels left the ground, she felt that irrational certainty that something would go wrong, but nothing did. The ascent was smooth. The seatbelt sign dinged off. Elena returned to her papers, red pen moving across the pages, writing encouraging comments in the margins. Somewhere ahead in business class, Vincent Moretti sat in seat 3A, his daughter Sophia curled up in 3B beside the window, her nanny Mrs. Chen in 3C. Sophia clutched her stuffed rabbit, her dark curls falling across her face as she colored in a princess book. Vincent watched her with the intensity of someone who'd learned that everything precious could be taken away in an instant. "Daddy, look." Sophia held up her picture, a castle with wildly disproportionate towers and a purple dragon. "Beautiful, princess," Vincent said softly, kissing the top of her head. His phone buzzed with messages from Marco about the meeting he'd just left in Miami, but he ignored them. Business could wait. These moments with Sophia were what mattered. "Mr. Moretti, would you like something to drink?" The flight attendant appeared with her cart, her smile professional but not quite reaching her eyes. She recognized him, he could tell. Most people in certain circles did. "Water, please." "Mrs. Chen?" "I'm fine, thank you," the nanny replied. Though she looked pale, she'd never liked flying. "Sophia, do you want juice?" His daughter nodded enthusiastically, and Vincent accepted the small cup, helping her with the straw. Such a simple thing, and yet it filled him with a contentment his business empire never could. "I need to use the restroom," Vincent told Mrs. Chen. "Watch her." "Of course, Mr. Moretti." He stood, making his way toward the rear of the business class cabin. The plane felt stable, the flight smooth. Outside the windows, clouds stretched endlessly, painted gold and pink by the setting sun. In economy, Elena had just finished her 10th essay when the plane gave a small jolt. She looked up, alert. The businessman beside her didn't even glance away from his screen. The teenager's music continued its muffled beat. Maybe she'd imagined it. Then it happened again, harder this time. The pilot's voice came over the intercom, calm, but firm. "Flight attendants, please take your seats. We're encountering some unexpected turbulence. Passengers, return to your seats and fasten your seatbelts." Elena's heart began to race. She clicked her seatbelt tighter, her essays forgotten in her lap. Around her, conversations died. The flight attendants moved quickly through the cabin, checking seatbelts, securing the drink cart. The plane dropped. Not dramatically, not catastrophically, but enough that several passengers gasped. Elena's stomach lurched. Her fingers dug into the armrests. The teenager beside her pulled out his earbuds, suddenly very young and very scared. Another drop. Luggage rattled in the overhead compartments. "Ladies and gentlemen, please remain calm and stay seated." The pilot's voice was tighter now. "We're working to find smoother air." But it got worse. The plane began to shake violently, as if a giant hand had grabbed it and was rattling it like a toy. The lights flickered. Someone screamed. The oxygen masks dropped with a mechanical snap that sent panic rippling through the cabin. Oh God, the teenager beside Elena was saying, his face gray. Elena grabbed her mask with shaking hands, putting it on as the flight attendant had demonstrated 100 times. Her mind was racing, prayers and random thoughts colliding. Her mother, her students, the cat her neighbor was watching. Please, please, please. A tremendous jolt sent the plane sideways. Luggage burst from an overhead bin 3 rows up, tumbling onto passengers who screamed and tried to shield themselves. The crack of plastic against metal filled the air, and then Elena heard it, cutting through the chaos like a knife, a child's terrified scream. She turned toward the sound, her teacher instincts overriding her fear. In business class, visible through the gap in the curtain, she could see a little girl alone in her seat, screaming, her small body rigid with terror. The woman beside her, presumably her caregiver, was frozen, her own mask on but her face blank with panic, unable to move or comfort the child. The plane dropped again. Something metallic groaned ominously. Elena didn't think. She unbuckled her seatbelt. "What are you doing?" The businessman grabbed her arm, his composure finally cracked. "Stay seated." She pulled away and lunged into the aisle, grabbing the seatbacks to keep her balance as the plane bucked and shook. A flight attendant somewhere was shouting for everyone to remain seated, but Elena couldn't hear over the roar of the engines and the screaming. She pushed through the curtain into business class. The little girl's eyes were squeezed shut, tears streaming down her face, her rabbit abandoned on the floor. "It's okay, sweetheart," Elena said, though she had to grab the seat to keep from falling as another violent shake hit. "It's okay, I'm here." She yanked off her jacket, the navy blue one she'd bought from a thrift store, soft and worn, and wrapped it around the child, tucking it around her shoulders and over her head, creating a cocoon. Then Elena squeezed into the small space beside the girl's seat, wrapping her arms around her, holding her close against her chest. "Close your eyes, baby. I've got you," Elena said directly into the child's ear, her voice as steady as she could make it. "We're safe. I promise you're safe." The little girl buried her face in Elena's shoulder, her small body shaking. Elena began to sing, the first thing that came to mind, a lullaby her own mother had sung to her. "Hush, little baby. Don't say a word. Mama's gonna buy you a mockingbird." Her voice was quiet, almost drowned out by the chaos, but the child could hear it. Elena felt the small body begin to relax incrementally, the grip on her shirt loosening just slightly. Vincent had been in the galley area, bracing himself against the counter when the worst of the turbulence hit. He'd tried to get back to Sofia, but a flight attendant had physically blocked him, her eyes wild with fear. "Sir, you can't. It's too dangerous." "My daughter!" He'd tried to push past her, but another violent jolt sent them both crashing against the wall. And then he'd seen her. A woman, dark hair, simple clothes, nothing remarkable except for what she was doing. She was holding Sofia, his Sofia, wrapped in her own jacket, singing to her while the plane tore itself apart around them. She'd positioned her own body between Sofia and the window, shielding her from anything that might break or fly loose. She didn't know who he was. She couldn't have. She was just a stranger who'd seen a terrified child and had risked her own life to comfort her. Vincent felt something crack open in his chest, something he'd kept carefully locked away since the day he'd buried his wife. Gratitude, yes, but something more, something that looked like hope. The turbulence lasted 4 more minutes, though it felt like hours. Gradually, the shaking lessened. The plane steadied. The awful groaning of stressed metal quieted. The pilot's voice returned, apologetic and relieved. "Ladies and gentlemen, we've cleared the rough air. We apologize for that frightening experience. Flight attendants, you may begin checking on passengers. We'll be landing in New York in approximately 30 minutes. In business class, Elena slowly lifted her head. Her heart was still racing, her hands trembling with adrenaline. The little girl in her arms had stopped crying, though her fingers still clutched Elena's shirt. "You're okay, sweetheart," Elena whispered. "See? All done. You were so brave." My daddy," the little girl said in a small voice. "I'm here, princess." Vincent appeared beside them, and Elena saw his face properly for the first time. Strong features, dark eyes that held shadows and secrets, but now filled with naked relief and something else she couldn't quite identify. "I'm here." He reached for Sofia, and Elena carefully helped transfer the child, her jacket still wrapped around the small shoulders. Vincent held his daughter tightly, his hand cradling her head, murmuring words Elena couldn't hear. The nanny, Mrs. Chen, had tears running down her face. "I'm so sorry, Mr. Moretti. I froze. I'm so sorry." "It's all right," Vincent said, though his voice was tight. "It's all right." He turned to Elena, who was now standing awkwardly in the aisle, suddenly aware that she'd just run through a plane during dangerous turbulence, probably broken several federal regulations, and was now in business class where she definitely didn't belong. "Thank you," Vincent said, and the inadequacy of the words hung between them. "I was trapped. I couldn't get to her. She was scared. Any child would be," Elena said, her own voice still shaky. "I'm a teacher. I just reacted." "Your jacket," Sophia said, holding up the navy blue garment. "You keep it, honey." Elena smiled at her. "It looks good on you." "I need your name," Vincent said. "Your contact information. I want to thank you properly." Elena hesitated. Something about this man made her cautious. The way the flight attendant stepped back when he spoke, the deference in the nanny's voice, the expensive watch on his wrist that probably cost more than Elena's entire year's salary. "That's really not necessary. Please." The word was soft but carried weight. "I insist." Around them, other passengers were beginning to stand, checking on each other, collecting fallen items. A flight attendant approached, her face pale and professional. "Ma'am, I need to ask you to return to your seat for landing." "Of course," Elena said quickly. "I'm sorry for—" "Don't apologize," Vincent interrupted. "She helped my daughter. She probably saved lives doing that." The flight attendant's eyes widened slightly as she seemed to register who Vincent was. "Of course, Mr. Moretti. Of course." Elena pulled a crumpled receipt from her pocket and borrowed a pen from the flight attendant, scribbling down her name and phone number. She handed it to Vincent, meeting his intense gaze for just a moment. "Elena Morrison," he read aloud. "Thank you, Elena Morrison. Take care of her," Elena said, nodding toward Sophia, who was watching her with dark, solemn eyes. "She's a brave girl." Then she turned and made her way back to economy, where the businessman and teenager looked at her like she was insane. The teenager actually moved to give her the aisle seat, a gesture of respect that made Elena's eyes sting with unexpected emotion. She buckled in for landing, her body finally beginning to understand that the danger had passed. Her hands wouldn't stop shaking. She clasped them together in her lap and stared out the window as the plane descended through the clouds toward the glittering lights of New York City. The landing was smooth. As the plane taxied to the gate, passengers broke into spontaneous applause. Relief, gratitude for the pilot's skill, celebration of survival. Elena closed her eyes and breathed. When they finally stopped, Elena gathered her scattered papers and bag. As she stood to deplane, she glanced toward business class. Vincent was standing, holding Sophia, but his eyes found Elena's through the crowd. He nodded once, a gesture that felt like a promise of something, though Elena couldn't imagine what. She filed off the plane with everyone else, up the jetway, and into the controlled chaos of LaGuardia Airport. Her friend Sarah was supposed to meet her at baggage claim. Elena just wanted to get home, take a hot shower, and try to stop her hands from shaking. But as she rode the escalator down to baggage claim, she noticed something odd. The business class passengers, including Vincent, had been directed to a different area. Through the crowd, Elena caught a glimpse of him walking with Sophia in his arms, flanked by two large men in dark suits who had appeared from nowhere. They moved with purpose, with authority, and other travelers instinctively gave them space. A black SUV with tinted windows pulled up to a side entrance, not the regular pickup area, but somewhere clearly reserved for VIPs. Vincent paused before getting in, turning as if he could sense her watching. Their eyes met across the crowded terminal. Then he was gone, the SUV pulling away into the night traffic. Elena, over here!" Sarah's voice cut through her thoughts. Elena turned to see her best friend pushing through the crowd, her red hair flying, her face creased with worry. "Oh my God, I saw on the news there was terrible turbulence. Are you okay? You look like you've seen a ghost." "I'm fine," Elena said, accepting Sarah's fierce hug. "It was scary, but I'm fine. Come on, let's get your bag and get out of here. You can tell me everything in the car." As they waited at the baggage carousel, Sarah kept glancing at her phone, scrolling through news feeds. "Hey, look at this," Sarah said, showing Elena her screen. "Someone on your flight was apparently pretty important. Vincent Moretti. He's some big deal businessman. Imports, exports, real estate. There's a photo of him leaving the airport." Elena looked at the photo. It was him, unmistakably, walking toward that black SUV. In the image, Sophia was visible in his arms, and wrapped around her small shoulders was a navy blue jacket, Elena's jacket. "Did you see him? He's gorgeous in that rich, dangerous kind of way," Sarah continued, oblivious to Elena's sudden stillness. "Probably a total jerk in real life, but fun to look at." "Yeah," Elena said quietly, grabbing her small suitcase as it came around. "I saw him." They walked out into the humid New York night. The storm that had caused the turbulence had passed through, leaving the air thick and electric. Elena climbed into Sarah's ancient Honda, exhaustion finally crashing over her. As they pulled into traffic, Elena's phone buzzed. Unknown number. She opened the text message. "Thank you again for what you did today. Sophia won't stop talking about the nice lady. If there's anything you ever need, please don't hesitate to ask. Vincent Moretti." Elena stared at the message for a long moment, then turned off her phone and tucked it in her bag. "Everything okay?" Sarah asked, navigating through the traffic. "Yeah," Elena said, leaning her head against the window, watching the city lights blur past. "Everything's fine." But as they drove toward her Brooklyn apartment, toward her normal life of grading papers and planning lessons and visiting her mother in the hospital, Elena couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted. She'd done what any decent person would do, protected a frightened child. But the way Vincent Moretti had looked at her, the weight of his gratitude, the instant appearance of those security personnel, it all suggested that her simple act of compassion had meant something more in his world than it did in hers. Elena just didn't know yet what that something was, or how completely it was about to change everything. 3 days after the flight, Elena woke to rain drumming against her bedroom window. The sound was oddly comforting, steady, predictable, normal. She'd slept poorly since returning to New York, her dreams filled with the sensation of falling, the sound of stressed metal groaning, a child's scream cutting through chaos. She pushed herself out of bed, padding across the cold floor of her small Brooklyn apartment. The place was modest, a one-bedroom in Sunset Park that ate up most of her teacher's salary, but it was hers. Books lined every available surface, student artwork covered the refrigerator, and her ancient coffee maker gurgled to life with familiar reluctance. Elena was halfway through her first cup, rain-soaked light filtering through the kitchen window, when someone knocked on her door. She frowned, tightening the belt on her robe. It was barely 7 in the morning. Her neighbor, Mrs. Chen, a different Mrs. Chen than Sophia's nanny, she'd realized with odd amusement, sometimes needed help with her computer, but never this early. Elena opened the door to find a delivery man holding the most extravagant flower arrangement she'd ever seen. Orchids, roses, lilies, easily $100 worth, probably more. "Elena Morrison? That's me, but I think there's been a mistake." "No mistake, ma'am. Sign here, please." Bewildered, Elena signed and accepted the massive arrangement, struggling with its weight. She carried it to her small kitchen table, searching through the blooms for a card. There wasn't one, just flowers, beautiful, expensive, and completely anonymous. Elena stood there in her bathrobe, coffee growing cold in her mug, staring at the arrangement. She knew who'd sent them. She didn't know how she knew, but she did. Her phone buzzed. Another text from the same unknown number. "I hope the flowers brighten your morning." The florist said orchids symbolize strength and beauty. Seemed appropriate. VM. Elena's fingers hovered over the keyboard. Part of her wanted to text back, to thank him. Another part, the practical teacher part that had learned not to accept expensive gifts from strangers, told her this was already too much. She set the phone down without responding and went to get ready for work. Across the city in Manhattan, Vincent Moretti stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows of his office, watching rain streak down the glass. The room was elegantly appointed. Dark wood, leather chairs, expensive art that served as both decoration and investment. To anyone who visited, it looked like the office of exactly what Vincent claimed to be, a successful importer with interests in real estate and legitimate shipping. Only a few people knew what else those shipping containers sometimes carried. What other interests Vincent protected with methods that would never appear in any business journal. She didn't respond to the flowers, Marco said from the doorway. Vincent's second-in-command was a broad-shouldered man in his 40s, loyal to the point of violence, smart enough to question when questioning was needed. "I can see that," Vincent said, not turning from the window. "You're being obvious about this. People are noticing. Let them notice." Marco moved into the room, closing the door behind him. "Vincent, you sent flowers to some random teacher. You've had me running background checks. You've been distracted for 3 days. Talk to me." Vincent finally turned, his expression unreadable. She put herself at risk for Sophia. During that turbulence, when everything was falling apart, she didn't think about herself. She just saw a scared child and protected her. "So you're grateful. Send a nice thank you note and move on." "When was the last time someone did something for me, for my family, without wanting something in return?" Vincent's voice was quiet but intense. "Everyone in our world, everyone we deal with, they all want something. Money, protection, favors, power. She wanted nothing." Marco was silent for a moment, understanding settling over his features. "She doesn't know who you are, what you are. No, she doesn't." And you want to keep it that way. Vincent moved to his desk, picking up a photo frame. Sophia, smiling, holding her rabbit. Sophia asks about her every day. The nice lady with the jacket. She wants to see her again. Vincent, I know what you're going to say. I know it's complicated, but I need to do something more than send flowers. Like what? Vincent had already thought about this, had spent 3 sleepless nights thinking about nothing else. Sophia's school, the private academy, they have a scholarship fund. I want to make a donation, anonymous, but earmarked for supplies for public school teachers in Brooklyn. Marco raised an eyebrow. That's actually reasonable. Subtle. I'm capable of subtle. Not lately, you're not. Vincent ignored that, returning to the window. The rain was heavier now, turning the city gray and soft. Also, I want to arrange a meeting. Casual. Accidental. There's nothing accidental about anything you do. Then make it look accidental. You're good at that. Marco sighed, the sound of a man who'd lost too many arguments with Vincent Moretti over the years. I'll see what I can do. But boss, be careful with this one. She's not from our world. Getting her involved. I'm not getting her involved. I'm just expressing gratitude. Right. Keep telling yourself that. After Marco left, Vincent stood alone in his office, watching rain wash down the windows. The truth he couldn't quite admit, even to himself, was that Elena Morrison had done something more dangerous than protecting Sophia. She'd reminded him that people like her existed, people who acted from simple goodness, without calculation or expectation of reward. In his world, that kind of person was either a threat or a treasure. He hadn't decided which she was yet. Elena's day at PS 118 passed in its usual controlled chaos. 23 fifth graders, each with their own needs, drama, and energy. By lunch, she'd broken up 2 arguments, helped one crying student whose parents were divorcing, and taught a surprisingly successful lesson on fractions using pizza diagrams. During her planning period, the school secretary found her in the teacher's lounge. Elena, there's a delivery for you at the front office. Another one? The words slipped out before Elena could stop them. The secretary, Mrs. Rodriguez, who'd worked at PS 118 for 30 years and missed nothing, gave her a curious look. Another one? Elena followed her to the office where 3 large boxes waited, addressed to her. She opened them with growing disbelief. Books. Dozens of them. New hardcover books. The kind her classroom library desperately needed but the school budget couldn't afford. Diverse characters. Engaging stories. Beautiful illustrations. Oh my God, breathed Jessica, another 5th grade teacher who'd followed them. Elena, these must have cost hundreds of dollars. Who sent them? There was no card, but Elena knew. I'm not sure, she lied, her face burning. Maybe it's a mistake. But her phone buzzed in her pocket and she knew it wasn't. For your students, every child deserves to see themselves in stories. VM. Elena's hands trembled slightly as she carried the boxes to her classroom. She should send them back. This was too much. But as she unpacked the books, she thought about Marcus, who never brought books home because his family couldn't afford them. About Aisha, who devoured every book Elena could give her but had read everything in the classroom library twice. About Jorge, who struggled with reading but loved graphic novels Elena couldn't afford to buy. These books would change her students' lives. How could she send them back? That evening, Elena finally responded to Vincent's text. The books are incredibly generous, but this has to stop. I don't need gifts. I did what anyone would do. His response came immediately. But they wouldn't have. You did. Please, let me thank you properly. Sophia wants to see you again. Elena stared at her phone in her quiet apartment, rain still falling outside. The smart thing would be to decline, to draw a firm line. But the memory of that little girl's terrified face, the weight of her small body in Elena's arms, the sound of her crying. One meeting, Elena typed. For her sake. That's all. That's all I ask. There's a cafe near your school, the Daily Grind on 5th Avenue. Tomorrow 4 p.m. I promise it will be brief and public. Elena hesitated, then agreed. Public place. Afternoon. Other people around. It would be fine. She didn't know that Marco had already confirmed the Daily Grind was one of the few cafes in the neighborhood with no security cameras, that Vincent had arranged for a specific corner table to be available, that nothing about this meeting would be accidental at all. The next afternoon, Elena arrived at the Daily Grind 10 minutes early, her teacher bag over her shoulder, still wearing the simple dress and cardigan she'd taught in. The cafe was busy with the after-school crowd, students with laptops, mothers with strollers, the comforting hum of normal life. She ordered a coffee and claimed a small table by the window, watching rain create rivers in the gutters outside. Her phone showed 3:58 p.m. She told herself if he was late, she'd leave. This was already a bad idea. At exactly 4 p.m., the door opened, and Vincent Moretti walked in. He was dressed more casually than on the plane. Dark jeans, a gray sweater, an umbrella dripping water. But there was something about him that made people look up, made conversations pause for just a moment. Presence, Elena thought, or maybe power. He spotted her immediately, his face softening into something like relief. Elena, thank you for coming. He slid into the seat across from her, and Elena noticed he sat with his back to the wall, his eyes constantly scanning the room. Can I get you another coffee? I'm fine, where's Sophia? With her nanny. I thought we should talk first, just us. A small alarm went off in Elena's head. You said Sophia wanted to see me. She does, but I wanted to apologize for the gifts. Marco, my associate, said I was being too much. He's probably right. Elena relaxed slightly. At least he had some self-awareness. The flowers were beautiful. The books they're wonderful, really. But Mr. Moretti? Vincent. Please, Vincent. I can't accept expensive gifts from strangers. It's not appropriate. The books aren't for you, they're for your students. That's a technicality. Maybe. He smiled slightly, and Elena was startled by how it transformed his face. The hardness eased, revealing something warm underneath. But those kids, you care about them. I can tell. The books will make a difference, won't they? Elena couldn't lie. Yes, a huge difference. Then let me do this one thing. Not for you. For them. They sat in silence for a moment, rain tapping against the window. Elena studied him, this mysterious wealthy man who sent flowers and books, who had security personnel and black SUVs, whose daughter wore her thrift store jacket like a treasure. What do you do, Vincent? Your tech signature says VM, but what does that mean? Who are you? He hesitated, and in that pause, Elena saw something flicker across his face. Calculation, maybe, or the weighing of truths. I run an import-export business, international shipping, some real estate investments. Nothing exciting. I'm just a single father trying to do right by his daughter. It wasn't quite a lie, but Elena sensed the edges of truth being carefully trimmed. Still, she had no reason to push. They were strangers, really, connected only by a moment of crisis. How is Sophia? Any nightmares? Vincent's expression shifted to pure paternal concern. A few. She sleeps with your jacket now. Refuses to let me wash it. Says it smells like safety. Elena's chest tightened. She can keep it, I have others. She'd like to thank you herself. Would you consider having dinner with us? At my home. Nothing formal. Just pizza and a chance for her to see you're real, that you're okay. Every instinct Elena had developed growing up in a modest family, working her way through state school, surviving on a teacher's salary in New York City, all of it screamed that this was a bad idea. Rich men didn't just invite strangers to their homes. There had to be an angle, a catch. But when she looked at Vincent, she didn't see calculation. She saw a father worried about his daughter's nightmares. One dinner, Elena heard herself say, for Sophia's sake. Just for Sophia's sake. Vincent agreed, but something in his eyes suggested he was lying too. They talked for another 20 minutes. Careful, polite conversation that skirted around anything too personal. Elena learned that Sophia was 5, that she loved drawing and her stuffed rabbit named Mr. Hoppy, that Vincent's wife had died 3 years ago. Vincent learned that Elena had been teaching for 4 years, that her mother was sick in Miami, that she'd never been married. When they finally stood to leave, Vincent held out his hand. Elena shook it, struck by the warmth of his grip, the calluses she hadn't expected on a businessman's palm. Saturday evening? I'll send a car. I'll meet you there. Elena interrupted. She'd agreed to dinner, not to surrendering all control. Vincent smiled, understanding the boundary she was drawing. I'll text you the address. Thank you, Elena. Really? She watched him leave, noting how he checked the street before stepping out, how a black car appeared immediately at the curb, how he moved with the efficiency of someone used to potential threats. Her friend Sarah was right. Something was off, but Elena thought of Sophia's nightmares, of a little girl sleeping with a stranger's jacket because it smelled like safety, and she pushed her doubts aside. One dinner. What could possibly go wrong? In the car, Marco glanced at Vincent in the rearview mirror. How'd it go? She agreed to dinner. You look pleased. Sophia will be happy. Right, for Sophia. Marco's tone suggested he didn't believe that for a second. Vincent stared out the rain-streaked window, watching the city blur past. The truth was, he'd spent his entire adult life reading people, identifying threats, calculating angles. It was how he'd survived in a world where trust was currency and betrayal was common. But Elena Morrison confused him. She wasn't trying to get close to him. She'd explicitly tried to maintain distance. She'd accepted gifts only when he framed them as benefiting others. She'd agreed to dinner only for Sophia's sake. Either she was the most sophisticated operator he'd ever encountered, playing a long game he couldn't yet see, or she was exactly what she appeared to be, a good person in a world that increasingly seemed to have too few of them. Vincent didn't know which possibility scared him more. What he did know was that Saturday evening couldn't come fast enough, and that Marco was right. He was being obvious about this, careless even. But for the first time in 3 years since he'd stood at his wife's grave with a 2-year-old Sophia in his arms, Vincent Moretti felt something other than the weight of responsibility and the cold calculation of survival. He felt curious, hopeful, almost human. The rain continued falling on New York City, washing the streets clean, and in 2 different boroughs, 2 people tried not to think too much about Saturday evening. Both failed completely. Saturday evening arrived with the kind of crystalline clarity that only follows days of rain. Elena stood in front of her closet, staring at the limited options with growing frustration. She told Sarah about the dinner. Impossible not to, given her friend's relentless questioning about the mysterious flower delivery, and Sarah had immediately offered to come over and help her get ready. "It's not a date," Elena said for the 3rd time, holding up a simple black dress, then rejecting it. "Too formal. It's dinner with a grateful father and his daughter." "Right, a grateful father who happens to be gorgeous and rich and can't stop sending you gifts." Sarah was sprawled on Elena's bed, scrolling through her phone. "I've been researching him, by the way, Vincent Moretti. There's surprisingly little information online. Business articles, some charity event photos, but nothing personal. No social media. That's weird for someone supposedly running a legitimate business, don't you think?" Elena pulled out a navy sweater dress. Modest, appropriate, not trying too hard. Maybe he values his privacy. Or maybe he's hiding something. "Sarah, I'm just saying, be careful. Rich, mysterious men with security details and anonymous gifts. That's either a romance novel or a crime thriller, and I'm not sure which." Elena turned to face her friend. "You think I shouldn't go?" Sarah sat up, her expression softening. "I think you've got good instincts. Trust them. If anything feels off, leave. I'll keep my phone on all night." An hour later, Elena stood on the sidewalk in the Upper East Side, staring up at a townhouse that had to be worth at least $10 million. The address Vincent had texted her led to a pristine 4-story building with elegant stonework and window boxes full of autumn flowers. The neighborhood was so quiet she could hear leaves rustling in the evening breeze. She'd refused Vincent's offer of a car service, taking the subway instead. Now she wondered if that had been stubbornness or self-preservation, a way to maintain some control over the situation. Elena climbed the steps and rang the bell. Through the frosted glass of the door, she saw movement, and then the door opened to reveal Vincent in jeans and a simple button-down shirt, looking more relaxed than she'd ever seen him. "Elena, you found it okay? Your directions were clear." She stepped inside, immediately struck by the home's understated elegance. High ceilings, warm lighting, comfortable furniture that managed to look both expensive and lived in. Children's drawings decorated the refrigerator visible through the kitchen doorway. A stuffed rabbit sat on the stairs. "Sophia's been counting down the hours," Vincent said, leading her down the hallway. "Fair warning, she made you something. It involves a lot of glitter." Before Elena could respond, a small whirlwind in a purple dress came racing down the stairs. "Miss Elena! Miss Elena!" Sophia crashed into Elena's legs, hugging her with surprising strength for such a small child. Elena knelt down, bringing herself to Sophia's eye level. "Hi, sweetheart, it's so good to see you. I made you a picture. And Daddy said we're having pizza and I get to stay up late because you're here." Sophia's words tumbled over each other in excitement. "Sophia, let Miss Elena breathe," Vincent said gently, but he was smiling in a way that transformed his entire face. Mrs. Chen appeared from a doorway, her expression warm with recognition. "Miss Morrison, how wonderful to see you again under better circumstances. Please call me Elena, and I'm glad to see you too." Dinner was surprisingly normal. They ate pizza at a large kitchen table, not the formal dining room Elena had expected. While Sophia chattered about her week, her favorite colors, and the elaborate backstory she'd invented for Mr. Hoppy the Rabbit, Vincent watched his daughter with open affection, occasionally helping her with her pizza or wiping sauce from her face. Elena found herself relaxing despite her earlier reservations. This didn't feel like the home of someone with secrets. It felt like a family trying to find their footing after loss. "Miss Elena, do you have any kids?" Sophia asked suddenly, her dark eyes curious. "No, sweetheart, but I have 23 students and they keep me pretty busy." "That's a lot. Do you love them?" "I do, very much. Daddy says you're a hero because you helped me on the airplane. Elena glanced at Vincent, who had the grace to look slightly embarrassed. I'm not a hero. I just didn't want you to be scared. But you were scared too, right? Daddy says being brave means doing things even when you're scared. Your daddy's right about that. After dinner, Sophia presented Elena with the promised artwork. A glitter-covered drawing of an airplane with two figures, one large and one small, holding hands. That's you and me, Sophia explained proudly. When you saved me. Elena's throat tightened. It's beautiful, can I keep it? Yes, I made it special for you. As Mrs. Chen took Sophia upstairs for her bath, Vincent led Elena to a sitting room off the main hallway. Floor-to-ceiling bookshelves lined one wall, a fireplace crackled softly, and through the windows the city lights twinkled in the distance. Wine? Vincent offered, moving to a small bar. Just water, please. He poured water for both of them, then settled into an armchair across from the sofa where Elena sat. The room felt intimate without being uncomfortable, the fire casting warm shadows across his features. Thank you for coming, Vincent said quietly. You saw how much it meant to her. She's a wonderful child. You're doing a good job with her. I'm trying. Some days are harder than others. He paused, studying his glass. Her mother, my wife, Caroline, she died when Sophia was 2. Car accident. Drunk driver. I'm so sorry. Sophia barely remembers her. Sometimes that feels like mercy, sometimes like another loss. Vincent looked up, his eyes meeting Elena's. I tell you this because I want you to understand why your actions on that plane meant so much. Sophia is everything to me, the only truly good thing in my life, and you protected her when I couldn't. There was something raw in his voice, something that made Elena's carefully maintained boundaries waver. I need to ask you something, Elena said carefully, and I need you to be honest with me. Vincent tensed slightly. All right. Who are you really? Because sending expensive flowers and books, living in a house like this, having security personnel meet you at airports, that's not normal for someone who just runs an import business. For a long moment, Vincent said nothing. Elena watched emotions flicker across his face. Calculation, concern, and finally something like resignation. You're right. I haven't been completely honest with you. Elena's heart began to beat faster. So tell me the truth. Vincent stood, moving to the fireplace, his back to her. My family business. It's more complicated than simple imports. We move products, yes, but we also facilitate certain transactions, some of which exist in gray areas of the law. Gray areas. Elena's voice was flat. I'm not a drug dealer. I don't hurt innocent people. But I operate in a world where the rules are different, where power and money create their own reality. He turned to face her. My father built this empire. I inherited it. And I've been trying for 3 years to make it legitimate, to give Sophia a different life than the one I had. Elena stood, her mind racing. Everything suddenly made sense. The security, the deference, the lack of online presence. You're telling me you're some kind of criminal. I'm telling you I'm trying not to be. That's not an answer. It's the only honest one I have. Vincent took a step toward her, then stopped, respecting the distance. I should have told you this before, but I needed to have this dinner, to let Sophia thank you, without you looking at me the way you're looking at me now. Elena grabbed her purse, her hands shaking. I need to leave. Elena, please. No, this was a mistake. I should never have come here. She was halfway to the door when Sophia's voice stopped her. Miss Elena? Are you leaving already? Elena turned to see Sophia on the stairs in her pajamas. Mr. Hoppy clutched to her chest, her face crumpling with disappointment. Elena's voice caught. I have to go, sweetheart, but thank you for the beautiful picture. But you just got here. Daddy said we could play a game. Vincent moved to the stairs, lifting Sophia into his arms. Miss Elena has things to do, princess. Maybe another time. Do you promise? Sophia looked directly at Elena, her dark eyes so hopeful it hurt. Elena opened her mouth to make a polite excuse, to extract herself from this situation cleanly, but looking at Sophia's face, remembering the weight of her small body during the turbulence, Elena found she couldn't lie to this child. Let me talk to your daddy for a minute, okay? Vincent carried Sophia back upstairs, and Elena stood in the elegant hallway, her heart pounding, her mind screaming at her to run. She pulled out her phone, fingers hovering over Sarah's contact. One call and her friend would talk her through leaving, would probably order her an Uber, would definitely say I told you so. But Elena thought about Sophia sleeping with a stranger's jacket because it smelled like safety, about Vincent's raw honesty when he could have kept lying, about the warmth of this house that felt nothing like a criminal's lair. Vincent returned alone, his expression guarded. Mrs. Chen is putting her to bed. I understand if you want to leave, I can call you a car. What did you mean when you said you're trying to make it legitimate? He blinked, clearly not expecting the question. I've been transitioning the business, selling off certain operations, focusing on legal enterprises. It takes time. You can't just walk away from this kind of thing without consequences, but I'm working toward it. For Sophia. And the gray areas you mentioned? Less gray than they used to be. More gray than they should be. His honesty was almost painful. I won't lie to you, Elena. I've done things I'm not proud of, but I've never hurt innocent people, and I'm trying to build something different. Elena moved to the window, looking out at the quiet street. In the glass, she could see Vincent's reflection, standing perfectly still, waiting for her judgment. I should go, she said finally. I understand, but I'd like to come back, to see Sophia, not because of you or your gifts or any of this. She gestured at the expensive room. Just because she's a sweet kid who's been through trauma, and if I can help with that, I want to. Vincent's reflection showed surprise. You'd be willing to do that, after what I just told you? I'm a teacher. I've had students whose parents were in prison, whose families were involved in things I didn't approve of. But the kids, they didn't choose their circumstances. Sophia didn't choose her father's business. No, she didn't. Vincent's voice was rough. Elena turned to face him. But I need boundaries. Clear ones. I'm not getting involved in your business, whatever it is. I'm not interested in your money or your world. I'm here for Sophia. Only Sophia. I understand. And if I find out you've lied to me again about anything important, I'm gone. Permanently. Fair enough. They stood there in the firelight, the air between them thick with unspoken things. Elena knew she should feel afraid, should be running from this situation. Instead, she felt strangely calm, as if some instinct deeper than logic was telling her that despite everything, she was safe here. I should really go now, Elena said. It's late. Let me call you a car, please. The subway isn't safe this time of night. Elena wanted to argue, to maintain her independence, but practicality won. All right, thank you. While they waited for the car, Vincent walked her to the door. Elena, thank you for staying, for listening. Most people wouldn't have. Most people probably have better survival instincts than me. He smiled slightly, or less courage. The car arrived, a regular sedan, not the intimidating black SUV, and Vincent walked her down the steps. Can I text you about another visit for Sophia? Elena hesitated, then nodded. For Sophia. But as the car pulled away and she looked back to see Vincent standing on his townhouse steps, his hands in his pockets watching her leave, Elena wondered if she was lying to him or to herself, because the truth was, her reluctance to leave hadn't been entirely about Sophia, and that terrified her more than anything he'd confessed. The car wound through the quiet streets toward Brooklyn, and Elena's phone buzzed with a text from Sarah. Well, are you still alive? Do I need to call the police? Elena stared at the message, then typed back, I'm fine. It's complicated. Tell you tomorrow. Complicated? Girl, you better call me the second you get home. But Elena turned off her phone and pressed her forehead against the cool window, watching the city slide past. She'd gone to dinner expecting one thing and found something else entirely. A little girl who needed kindness. A father trying to build a better life. A world that existed in shades of gray she'd never had to navigate before. The smart thing would be to walk away. To leave Vincent Moretti and his complicated life behind. Elena had always been smart, but as the car crossed the bridge into Brooklyn, as the Manhattan skyline glittered behind her like a promise or a warning, Elena realized that for the first time in her carefully planned life, she had no idea what she was going to do. In his daughter's room, Vincent sat on the edge of Sophia's bed, watching her sleep. She'd asked 3 more times if Miss Elena would come back, and each time Vincent had promised she would, even though he'd had no right to make that promise. But Elena had said yes, not for him. She'd been painfully clear about that, but she'd said yes. Vincent thought about how she'd looked when he'd told her the truth, the flash of fear, yes, but also something else. Not judgment, not condemnation, understanding maybe, or at least the willingness to try to understand. He pulled out his phone and texted Marco. We need to tighten security around Elena Morrison, discreetly. I don't want her followed or scared, but I need to know she's safe. Marco's response came immediately. Boss, if you're getting civilians involved, I'm not involving her, I'm protecting her, there's a difference. Is there? Vincent didn't answer, because the truth was, he didn't know anymore. What he did know was that Elena Morrison had walked into his world, seen what he was, and hadn't run screaming. That made her either incredibly brave or incredibly foolish. Either way, Vincent was determined to make sure nothing from his world touched her. even if that meant protecting her from himself. Outside, the city settled into its nighttime rhythm. In Brooklyn, Elena finally made it home and collapsed onto her couch, Sophia's glitter-covered drawing in her hands. In Manhattan, Vincent checked the locks on his doors and set the security system as he did every night, and somewhere in between, in the gray spaces where their two very different worlds had collided, something was beginning that neither of them could control, something that felt dangerously like connection. 2 weeks passed like a dream Elena couldn't quite wake from. She'd returned to Vincent's townhouse 3 times. Always for Sophia, she told herself. The little girl had grown attached with the intensity only a 5-year-old could manage, asking for Elena during dinner, wanting to show her new drawings, insisting Elena read her bedtime stories in a way that made Mrs. Chen smile with relief. She hasn't bonded with anyone like this since her mother, the nanny confided during Elena's 4th visit, while Sophia was picking out books upstairs. Mr. Moretti worries about her, about how isolated she is, but with you she's different, happier. Elena had nodded, ignoring the uncomfortable warmth in her chest that came from feeling needed, from feeling wanted in this strange, beautiful house that seemed to exist outside normal reality. But it wasn't just Sophia pulling her back. It was the late-night conversations with Vincent after Sophia went to sleep, the way he asked about her students with genuine interest, remembering their names from previous stories, the vulnerability that crept into his voice when he talked about his wife, about the guilt of not being able to protect her, about his desperate desire to give Sophia a normal life. Define normal, Elena had said one evening, curled into the corner of his sofa, while rain tapped against the windows. They'd fallen into this routine, talking until midnight, sharing wine and stories, the space between them growing smaller each time. I don't know anymore, Vincent had admitted. I used to think it meant safety, a good school, a safe home, enough money that Sophia would never want for anything. But now I think maybe normal means having people who care about you, people who show up not because they're paid to, but because they want to. His eyes had held hers when he said it, and Elena had looked away first, her heart beating too fast. She'd told Sarah selected pieces of truth, that she was helping a single father's daughter, that the situation was complicated but not dangerous. Sarah had listened with increasing skepticism, finally asking the question Elena had been avoiding. Are you falling for him? No, it's not like that. Elena, I've known you for 6 years. I've watched you date exactly 3 men, all of them safe and boring, and you dumped them all within 2 months. This guy, this complicated, mysterious, probably criminal guy, you can't stop talking about him. I talk about Sophia. You talk about how he is with Sophia, how he makes you coffee the way you like it, how he asked about your mother's health. That's not about the kid, babe. That's about him. Elena had ended the call, but Sarah's words haunted her. Now, on a cold November evening, Elena sat in her classroom long after her students had gone home, grading papers by the light of her desk lamp. Her phone buzzed. Vincent's name on the screen. Are you free tonight? I know it's last minute, but Sophia had a hard day and she's asking for you. Elena should say no. She'd already seen them twice this week. This was becoming too much, too often, too important. She texted back, I'll be there in an hour. The car Vincent sent picked her up at school. She'd stopped fighting this particular battle, accepting that the subway at night made him genuinely anxious. The driver, a quiet man named Thomas, had become familiar, always polite, never intrusive. But tonight, as they drove through Manhattan, Elena noticed something different. Another car seemed to be following them, maintaining the same distance through multiple turns. Thomas, is someone following us? His eyes flicked to the rearview mirror. Standard security protocol, Miss Morrison. Nothing to worry about. Security protocol for what? Mr. Moretti likes to ensure safe transport for his guests. Elena's stomach tightened. She'd been existing in a bubble, treating these visits like they were normal. But this, armed security surveillance, this was a reminder of the world Vincent actually inhabited. The car pulled up to the townhouse, and Vincent was waiting at the door, his face tense. Elena, thank you for coming. He ushered her inside quickly, his hand briefly touching her back in a gesture that felt protective. We need to talk. Before you see Sophia. What happened? He led her to his study, a room she'd never been in before. Dark wood paneling, a massive desk, and on one wall a series of monitors showing security camera feeds from around the house and street. Vincent closed the door. There's been a development in my business. Nothing dangerous, he added quickly, seeing her face. But it means increased scrutiny. On me, on my associates, on anyone connected to me. I'm not connected to you. Elena. His voice was gentle but firm. You've been here multiple times. My security team has been driving you. Anyone watching me knows about you now." The words landed like stones in her stomach. "You said I wouldn't be involved in your world. I thought I could keep you separate. I was wrong." Vincent moved closer, his expression pained. "I'm so sorry. I should have been more careful. I should have thought about the consequences of what? Of me helping your daughter?" Elena's voice rose. "Of me caring about her? Of me caring about you?" The admission hung between them, electric and terrifying. "Don't," Elena whispered. "Don't say that." "Why not? It's true. These past 2 weeks, Elena, you've brought something into this house, into our lives, that I didn't think was possible anymore. Light, hope, the feeling that maybe we could be something other than what my father's legacy made us. Vincent, I know it's selfish. I know you deserve better than this, than me, but I can't pretend anymore that this is just about Sophia." Elena's hands were shaking. Everything she'd been denying, every feeling she'd pushed down rose up with crushing force. "What exactly are you saying?" "I'm saying that somewhere between that airplane and tonight, I've fallen in love with you. And I know that's insane because we barely know each other, because my world is dangerous, because you're good and I'm trying to be, but I'm not there yet." Vincent's voice cracked. "But it's true, and you deserve to know that before you decide whether to stay or go." Before Elena could respond, before she could process what he'd just said, the door burst open. Marco stood there, his face grim. "Boss, we have a problem." Vincent's entire demeanor changed, hardening into something commanding and cold. "What kind of problem?" "The Castellano family. They know about her." Marco's eyes flicked to Elena. "They've been watching. They saw the car, the security detail. They think she's leverage." Elena felt the blood drain from her face. "Leverage for what?" "There's a territorial dispute," Vincent said, his voice tight and controlled. "Over shipping routes. The Castellanos want concessions. They think—" He looked at Elena, and she saw genuine fear in his eyes for the first time. "They think you matter to me, which means they might try to use you to force my hand." "This is insane." Elena backed toward the door. "I need to leave. I need to go home." "Elena, wait. No, this is exactly what I was afraid of. You said I wouldn't be involved, and now you're telling me some crime family is watching me?" Marco stepped forward. "Miss Morrison, I understand you're scared, but leaving right now is actually the most dangerous option. Your apartment has been under surveillance since this afternoon. If you go back there alone, then I'll go to Sarah's, or a hotel, or—" "They'll follow you," Vincent said quietly. "Anyone you go to, anywhere you stay, they'll find you. And without protection, without my people watching over you." He couldn't finish the sentence. Elena sank into a chair, her mind racing. This couldn't be happening. This morning she'd been teaching fractions and breaking up playground arguments. Now she was somehow caught in the middle of a crime family dispute. "How long?" she managed to ask. "How long am I in danger?" "Until I resolve this," Vincent said. "I'm meeting with Castellano tomorrow. I'll give him what he wants. Territory, money, whatever it takes. But until then, I'm trapped. Until then, you're protected. Here, with me, you're safe. I promise you that." Elena laughed, a sound without humor. "Your promises don't mean much right now." Vincent flinched but didn't argue. "Marco, status on Elena's apartment?" "2 men in a car across the street, one at the coffee shop on the corner. They're not being subtle, they want us to know they're watching." "And Sophia?" "Upstairs with Mrs. Chen, unaware. I've doubled security around the perimeter." Vincent nodded, then turned back to Elena. "I know you hate this. I know you're angry and scared, and you have every right to be, but please stay here tonight. Let me fix this. Let me keep you safe." Elena wanted to scream, to rage at him for pulling her into this nightmare, but she looked at his face, at the genuine terror beneath the control, at the way his hands trembled slightly despite his calm voice, and she realized something. He wasn't just scared for her, he was terrified. "One night," she said finally. "You have one night to fix this, and then I'm gone, Vincent. From your life, from Sophia's. This, whatever this is, it's over." Pain flashed across his face, but he nodded. "I understand." "Miss Elena?" Sophia's voice called from upstairs. "Are you here? Daddy said you were coming." Elena closed her eyes, gathering herself. Sophia. This wasn't Sophia's fault. The little girl didn't need to see Elena falling apart. "I'm here, sweetheart," Elena called back, forcing brightness into her voice. "I'll be right up." She looked at Vincent. "She doesn't need to know about any of this." Agreed. Elena went upstairs, leaving Vincent and Marco in the study. She found Sophia in her room, surrounded by stuffed animals, her face lighting up when Elena appeared. "Miss Elena, I had a bad dream at school today and Mrs. Chen said you were coming and it made me feel better." Elena gathered the little girl into her arms, breathing in the scent of baby shampoo and innocence. Tell me about the dream, sweetheart. As Sophia talked, as Elena soothed and listened and read bedtime stories, she felt her heart breaking, because she'd done exactly what she'd promised herself she wouldn't. She'd fallen in love with this child, and possibly with her father, though she was too terrified to examine that feeling closely. An hour later, Sophia was asleep. Mr. Hoppy clutched to her chest. Elena returned downstairs to find Vincent alone in the living room, staring into the fireplace. Marco, coordinating with our security team, making sure every entrance is covered. Elena sat on the opposite end of the sofa, the distance between them feeling symbolic. Tell me the truth. How much danger am I actually in? Vincent didn't look away from the fire. The Castellanos won't hurt you physically. That would start a war nobody wants. But they might approach you, threaten you, try to scare you into pressuring me. Or they might take photos, create evidence that you're important to me. Use it as psychological leverage. And you're going to give them what they want? I'm going to give them enough that they leave you alone. Yes. What are you giving up? A shipping route through Newark, about 20% of my legitimate revenue. Also access to a warehouse in Queens that I was planning to sell anyway. Elena did the math in her head. That's hundreds of thousands of dollars, maybe millions. Money I can recover, your safety. His voice caught. That's not negotiable. You just told me you love me and now you're bankrupting yourself to protect me. Don't you see how insane that is? Vincent finally turned to look at her, and the raw emotion in his eyes made Elena's breath catch. I've spent 3 years making calculated decisions. Business moves, security protocols, everything measured and controlled. But you, Elena, you're the first thing I've felt, rather than calculated. And yes, maybe that's insane. Maybe it's stupid. But I meant what I said. I love you, and I won't let my world destroy you. It's already destroying us. Whatever us could have been. I know. They sat in silence, the fire crackling, the weight of impossible choices pressing down on both of them. I need to tell you something, Elena said finally, and I need you to listen without interrupting. Vincent nodded. I came here tonight ready to admit something to myself, that I have feelings for you, real ones, that when you text me my whole day gets better, that I think about you when I'm teaching, when I'm grading papers, when I'm falling asleep, that Sophia isn't the only reason I keep coming back. She watched hope bloom on his face, then crushed it with her next words. But this, tonight, the surveillance, the danger, it proves that what I feel doesn't matter. We can't do this. There's no version of reality where a public school teacher from Brooklyn and what do I even call you? A crime boss trying to go legitimate? There's no version where that works. Elena, you promised not to interrupt. Her voice was steady despite the tears threatening. I care about you. I might even love you, though I haven't let myself think about it that deeply because it terrifies me. But more than that, I care about Sophia. And she can't grow up watching her father make impossible choices. Can't have her life defined by security protocols and territorial disputes. She deserves better. She deserves you. She deserves normal, whatever that means. Vincent stood, pacing to the window. What if I walk away? Completely. Give Marco the business. Take Sophia and disappear. Start over somewhere new. Could you do that? Really? For you? Yes. But would you resent me for it? In a year, in 5 years, would you look at me and think about everything you gave up? He didn't answer, which was answer enough. Elena stood, wrapping her arms around herself. I should try to sleep. Tomorrow, after your meeting, after this is resolved, I'm going home. And I think I need to not come back. Elena, please. I'm sorry, Vincent. I'm so sorry. But I can't do this. I can't live looking over my shoulder. Can't build a life knowing that any moment someone might use me as leverage against you. And I can't watch Sophia grow up in that world either. She moved toward the stairs, but Vincent caught her hand, his grip gentle but desperate. One more day, after I meet with Castellano, after the threat is neutralized, give me one more day to prove that we can make this work. Please. Elena looked at their joined hands, at the way his thumb traced circles on her palm, at the hope and fear warring on his face. One more day, she whispered. But Vincent, don't make promises you can't keep. I won't. I promise. He stopped, recognizing the contradiction, and almost smiled despite everything. I'll try. That's all I can promise. I'll try. Elena went upstairs to the guest room she'd never expected to use, closing the door and leaning against it. Her phone showed 17 missed calls from Sarah, but she couldn't deal with that now. She couldn't deal with anything except the impossible weight of having found something precious in the last place she expected, only to watch it slip through her fingers. Downstairs, Vincent returned to his study where Marco waited. Meeting set for 10 a.m. at the warehouse, Marco reported. Castellano agreed to your terms. He'll back off the girl in exchange for Newark and Queens. Good. Make sure our people know Elena's off limits permanently. I want that message sent to every family, every associate. She's protected. Understood? Understood. Boss, are you sure about this? Giving up that much territory? I'm sure. And the girl? After tomorrow? Vincent was silent for a long moment. After tomorrow, I respect her choice. Even if that choice is walking away. You love her. I do. That's complicated. Everything about my life is complicated, Marco. She's the first uncomplicated thing I've felt in years, and I'm going to lose her because of all the complicated parts. Marco left, and Vincent sat alone in his study, looking at the security monitors showing Elena's room, where a light still glowed under the door. He'd meant everything he said. He would give up his business, his empire, his identity, if it meant keeping her safe. But would she want him if he did? Would she love the man he'd be without the power and control that had defined him? Vincent didn't know, and that uncertainty, more than any business threat or security risk, scared him more than anything. The night deepened. In her room, Elena finally fell into an uneasy sleep, dreaming of airplanes and falling and strong arms catching her. In his study, Vincent worked through contingency plans, legal documents, exit strategies, preparing for a future he desperately hoped he'd get to choose. And in the morning, everything would change. One way or another, the choices they made tomorrow would determine if what they'd found was strong enough to survive the worlds they came from, or if love, no matter how real, sometimes just wasn't enough.